This is a Mazda MX-5/Miata, and today I will explain how this car achieved something that no other car ever has, and probably never will.
Jinba ittai. In Japanese, this means horse and rider as one. It's a very important concept in Japanese mounted archery, or Yabusame. And what it basically conveys is a state in which the horse and rider act as a single being. They are connected to the point where they're effectively reading each other's minds. When this state is achieved, the rider can use his or her hands to aim and shoot the bow instead of holding the reins. And this concept, Jinba ittai, is what Mazda chose as the guiding principle behind their development of the Mazda MX-5. The only difference being that instead of horse and rider, we have car and driver. But to say that the unification of car and driver is something unique to Mazda would be a blatant lie, because many manufacturers were doing it decades before Mazda and doing it well without referencing horses or riders. And of course, Mazda was very much aware of this. So what Mazda did is that they purchased and intimately studied this car, the Lotus Elan, during the development process of the Mazda MX-5. And if you look at the two cars side by side, the inspiration behind the first generation of the MX-5 is very obvious. It may not be known very well to young drivers and enthusiasts today, but the Lotus Elan, the first generation made from 62 to 74, is remembered by many as a car that delivered truly incredible and unparalleled driving joy. Back in the day, Car and Driver described it like this. The Elan comes closer than anything else on the market to providing a formula car for ordinary street use. And it fits like a Sprite, goes like a Corvette, and handles like a Formula Junior. Driving it is very simply another sort of automotive experience altogether. Most people tend to come back from their first ride a little bit glassy-eyed. So the driving joy is such that it makes drivers cry. One of the greatest car designers and engineers of all times, Gordon Murray, had this to say about the car. Series 3 Lotus Elan, it's still, in my opinion, probably the best handling sports car that's ever been made. If anybody wants to know what good steering is, just jump in the 60s Elan. So Mazda just took one of the best handling and best feeling sports cars ever and ripped it off. Along the way, they made up some nonsense with horse and riders, so it looks like it's their idea. And that's it. End of story. Thanks all for watching. Of course, no. To call the MX-5 a copy would be missing the point. Over the years, many Japanese manufacturers have inspired themselves with products of other countries. But these cars have always been more than just a copy. A copy pales in comparison to the original. The MX-5 does not. In fact, it set and achieved a far more difficult and ambitious goal than the Lotus Elan. To realize what that goal is, we have to compare sales between the two cars. So which car sold more units, the original or the copy? Well, over the years, over the course of its production, the Lotus Elan sold around 12,000 units. The Mazda sold 400,000, and that's just the first generation alone. The 4 generations combined sold more than 1 million. The obvious question is why? If the Elan made people tear up while driving, why didn't it take the world by storm and sell hundreds of thousands of units? Well, the answer to that question is that the Elan was essentially a hand-built car. It used, for its time, a revolutionary steel backbone chassis with a fiberglass body on top. And although this made the car very lightweight, it made production slow and expensive. And although Lotus used as many conventional Ford components on the car as possible to keep costs down, the car was still expensive. You could buy 2 Mini Cooper S's for the price of 1 Elan, and that was just the initial underpowered Elan 1500 version. The more powerful versions that would come later would actually rival the Jaguar E-Type in terms of price. And this is where the incredible ambitiousness of Mazda's goal comes into perspective. What Mazda wanted to do is to preserve the driving feel and quality of the Elan and its lightweight, while at the same time making the car affordable, reliable, and suitable for mass production. That's the equivalent of saying I'm going to prepare myself to compete in the Olympics on a diet of nothing but junk food. And this is where the Jinba ittai thing comes in. Now what's interesting is that this phrase was originally only used internally among the engineers. It was used externally only later when one of the project managers printed it on his business cards. So it wasn't originally conceived as some sort of marketing ploy. Instead, it was an internal mantra between the engineers. And I like to imagine that there was a big calligraphy poster in the office with Jinba ittai on it. Post-its with Jinba ittai everywhere. Maybe they even wrote it on their hands, the engineers. So why would they remind themselves of this concept so much? Did they have early onset dementia? Of course no. I think why they used this and why they needed this so much is that they could resist the process of adapting a car for mass production and a certain price point. They used Jinba ittai so they would never forget what the essence of the car is. They were essentially brainwashing themselves with it. Of course, this is just my imagination, but I think the mantra was there for a reason. And the reason is that there is no greater fun killer than making a car suitable for mass production and fitting a certain price point. Every part gets examined and re-examined until it fits the bill. If it doesn't fit the bill and isn't easy enough to manufacture, it gets replaced by a heavier, less effective, and uglier part. Mass production adaptation always preys on the same victims: driving fun, style, ease of maintenance, reliability, and lightweight. And there are only two weapons that an engineer can use to resist this process. And these two weapons are perseverance and creativity. And they must be incredibly sharp if the essence of the car is to be preserved. Oh, got an email. What does it say? That's okay, I guess. We could just use McPherson struts everywhere. Huh? What is this? Jinba ittai. Oh, no, you don't. But on a cold and windy Chicago day in February of 1989, when the Mazda MX-5/Miata was unveiled, it became instantly obvious that Mazda engineers managed to do the impossible. They made a car that was very fun to drive, very lightweight, but also affordable and suitable for large production numbers. And here's the catch. The era is the late 80s, early 90s, the time of more equipment, more cylinders, more turbos, more everything. And Mazda decided to give everyone less in the time of more. And everyone loved it.
The MX-5 is the epitome of simplicity. 50% weight here, 50% weight here. Engine in here, drive here. Transmission is manual, double wishbone here, double wishbone here. You will notice there's no turbo, no four-wheel drive, no multi-link, no rear-wheel steering, no automatic, variable, intelligent, anything. Less is more. Light is right. Now, I can use all the adverbs and analogies I want to try and describe what it feels like to drive an MX-5, but you won't ever understand until you actually take one for a drive. So instead of adverbs and analogies, I'm gonna tell you a little story. The story of a different MX-5, and an MX-5 is the car that got me into cars, that got me hooked on driving and everything related to enjoyable and fun driving. This happened, I think, more than 10 years ago, and there was an MX-5 for sale near my apartment, and I wanted to just go and check it out with zero intention of buying, just to do a little test drive to see what all the hype is about. So I went there and the owner met me, and he told me, go take it for a little drive. And I did. I took it around a little drive around a residential neighborhood area. And that little drive, I think it was about 5 minutes, and the maximum I ever did was like 30, 40 kilometers per hour. It was the single most car-related transformative experience of my life. The first thing that I remember, and I'm gonna remember it forever, is that the end of the car was there. The end of the passenger cabin was there. I could see it, I could touch it. And for some reason, for me, this was incredible. It felt right. The whole car felt like I had a past life where I owned it and now I'm in it, and it all just made sense. The steering was this neural connection with the road and the tires, the transmission, the shifter was this bolt action rifle. It's like all of a sudden everything made sense. I never drove a two-seater roadster before, and for me that moment I realized, okay, this is what a car should be. This is how driving should feel like. Everything else all of a sudden looked like a bus, a truck, or something very big, heavy, and boring. And by the time I got home, I started scraping together money that I didn't have to buy a car that I had zero intention of buying like 15 minutes ago. Now, I couldn't scrape the money together, so the purchase never happened, but that car, the MX-5, became the benchmark for me for driving from that moment onwards until today, and probably the rest of my life. Everything I drove after that was compared to the MX-5, and if I couldn't find traces of the same feelings and sensations, there was no interest from my side. But you see, the amazing feeling of driving the MX-5 isn't the only moral of my little story. Perhaps a more important point was that the MX-5 was there, available, accessible, and because of this, hundreds of thousands of different people went through a transformative experience just like mine. You could argue that there are better cars out there, faster, more capable around the track or whatever, but none of them have introduced the same amount of people to the joys of driving as the MX-5. And this is because the other cars are either too expensive, too intimidating, too heavy, too much of something. The MX-5 is too much of nothing. It manages to combine two seemingly antagonistic things, and that is that it manages to entertain the experienced driver but also flatter the novice without pillaging anybody's wallet in the process. The engine too, of course, is the embodiment of the design philosophy of less is more. 4 cylinders, 2 cams, 16 valves, naturally aspirated, transversely mounted. Frills equals 0. What's interesting is that not only does the engine look like the engine in the Lotus Elan, it actually makes very similar power, despite the 27 years of age difference between the two cars. And this is because Mazda realized that you don't need more power to have more fun. You need a linear, user-friendly power that aids you in the process of harnessing the beautiful capabilities of the chassis and the suspension. You don't need too much power that inhibits you from this by spinning out the car at corner exit and driving the price up.
When we take all of this into account, we realize the true incredible achievement of the MX-5. And that is that it manages to hit the bullseye, which lies at the perfect intersection of all the important car qualities: driving joy, cost, ease of maintenance, reliability, and power. There are cars which can beat the MX-5 at one, maybe two things, but none of them can hit the bullseye as well. And this is why, over the years, the MX-5 never really had a true competitor. There were other two-seater roadsters, convertibles, whatever, but eventually most of them faded from existence, whereas the MX-5 remained true to its essence. Eventually, all the car manufacturers realized that they simply couldn't hit the bullseye as perfectly as Mazda. So some decided to join Mazda instead of trying to beat them. They took the MX-5 and just rebadged it. It's a lot easier that way. The other truly remarkable thing is that over the years, Mazda managed to not dilute the recipe. Most other manufacturers embraced more, but Mazda stayed with less. In 2014, when they released the fourth generation of the MX-5, the ND, my jaw dropped. I was honestly speechless because the base model of the ND managed to be lighter and smaller than the original from 1989. Lighter and smaller in the age of airbags, ABS, ASP, and emission and safety standards. It was Mazda's way of saying you have no excuse, because most other manufacturers are either saying or implying that because of modern emissions and safety standards, they can't make fun cars while keeping the price sensible. The ND was Mazda's response, and it said, nah man, you're just lazy. Over the years, cars have changed and evolved, and we have found many ways to go from A to B faster and more effectively. But when it comes to going from A to B, while also having fun, we really haven't come up with anything better than front engine, rear-wheel drive, 2 seats, lightweight, manual transmission. This is the peak of cars that place importance on the driver and driving feel, enjoyment, and involvement. Right now, we seem to be living in an age of transformation and change, and this is of course inevitably changing the car as well, and we seem to be heading from car and person as one towards screen and person as one. The peak of driving enjoyment seems to have been reached, and we're now maybe going down the curve. Maybe we're somewhere here. You never really know, but what I'm trying to say is that future trends might make it impossible to provide a car as fun as the MX-5 in the same numbers. And this is why the MX-5/Miata will probably never be beaten when it comes to providing universally applicable driving joy. And this is why it should be enjoyed and driven as much as possible. Rejoice in that which we have.